I was sitting quietly on the defendant's bench, hands folded in my lap, letting my attorney handle the procedural formalities. The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs, but I remained still, focused, steady. I knew what I carried in my coat pocket, and that was all that mattered. Across the room, two uniformed officers leaned back on the bench, exchanging smirks. One of them, a burly man with a shaved head, let out a snort loud enough to draw glances. His partner, thinner and younger, followed with a snide whisper that was still just loud enough for me to hear. "This guy. He looks like he's never been in a courtroom before. Bet he folds in 10 minutes. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. They didn't know who I was. That was the entire point. Judge Melrose, a thin woman in her 60s with piercing gray eyes, entered and gavelled the room to order. The bailiff called the case. My name echoed through the chamber. Case number 2214B. People vs. Langston, Derek M. I stood. The two officers laughed again. "You ready for your lesson in the justice system, Mr. Langston?" the bald one jeered under his breath. I turned to look at him, just once. Calm. Silent. He laughed harder. What they didn't realize was that I wasn't here to defend myself. I was here to watch. And to act when the time came. My attorney, Mark Castillo, stood up and gave a practiced nod to the judge. "Your Honor," he began, "we respectfully request to proceed with a statement before entering a plea." Judge Melrose raised an eyebrow. "Go on, Mr. Castillo." I could feel the officers still watching me from the benches, amused and certain they had the upper hand. I didn't acknowledge them. I kept my eyes forward, calm, composed. Mark reached into his briefcase and retrieved a plain black folder. He placed it gently on the table, opened it, and slid out a document with a silver seal. This court may not yet be aware that Mr. Langston was operating in an official capacity at the time of the incident in question. The officers shifted slightly. I saw the bald one nudge his partner, still grinning. Judge Melrose tilted her head, intrigued but unconvinced. "Is that so?" she said slowly. "And what capacity would that be?" I stood up straight, reached into my coat pocket, and produced a slim leather wallet. With one motion, I flipped it open and held it in front of me. The courtroom went silent. Displayed inside, my active credentials as a senior field agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Both officers froze. The younger one's jaw dropped. The bald one leaned forward, squinting in disbelief. Mark continued smoothly. Special Agent Langston was embedded under Directive 7C, operating as part of a broader federal investigation when the encounter with these two officers took place. That detail was omitted from the initial arrest report. Judge Melrose leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Is that confirmed?" I spoke for the first time, my voice calm but unmistakably firm. "Yes, Your Honor. And I have authorization to submit sealed documentation verifying the investigation, along with a formal complaint against the arresting officers for obstruction." Silence thickened the air. The officers' faces drained of color. Judge Melrose leaned forward, her gaze locked on my badge as if it might vanish if she blinked. "Approach the bench, Agent Langston." I did. My steps were measured and steady, the click of my shoes the only sound in the courtroom. When I reached the bench, I handed her a sealed envelope marked classified, DOJ/FBI eyes only. She broke the seal carefully and read in silence. Behind me, the officers were no longer smirking. I didn't have to turn around to feel their shift. What had been cocky amusement had turned into something colder. Uncertainty. Fear. After a long pause, the judge finally spoke, her tone now significantly different. "This changes everything." She looked directly at the two officers. "Bailiff, bring them forward." They stood reluctantly. The bald one's hands were clenched at his sides. His partner looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. As they approached, Judge Melrose didn't mask her disapproval. "Officers Hill and Brenner, would you like to explain why this court was not informed that the individual you arrested was a federal agent operating under direct authorization?" Hill opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Brenner tried to speak, but it was a stammered mess of excuses. I mean, we didn't know, he didn't look like." I finally turned to face them. Calm as ever. "That's the point," I said. "I wasn't supposed to look like anything." Judge Melrose slammed her gavel once. "I'm placing a temporary hold on all charges pending further investigation. Agent Langston, you are released from all custody effective immediately." The officers stood frozen as the gallery began to whisper again. But this time, no one was laughing. As I stepped down from the defendant's stand, the weight of the moment was unmistakable. Courtroom staff, even the clerk, had gone unusually quiet. I could feel their eyes tracing every move I made, but I wasn't here for applause. I approached the officers directly. Officer Hill, the bald one, stared at me like he still couldn't process what was happening. Brenner had gone pale, his posture deflated. I spoke plainly. "You both made a judgment based on your assumptions. You didn't check IDs. You didn't follow procedure. You thought you were dealing with someone you could intimidate. That mistake just made its way into an official FBI file." Hill finally found his voice, though it was forced. "You tricked us." "No," I said flatly. "You overlooked me. That's not the same." Judge Melrose, hearing the exchange, didn't intervene. She let it hang there in the air, like she agreed that the lesson needed to be learned in full. My attorney joined me as I gathered my things. Mark gave me a quiet look, part relief, part admiration. "They'll be dealing with internal affairs and federal oversight by the end of the day," he whispered. "I know," I replied. "That was always part of the plan." As I walked out of the courtroom, heads turned. The same people who had likely assumed I was another man caught up in the system were now whispering about federal badges and sealed evidence. The courtroom doors closed behind me. But I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Outside the courthouse, the air was cooler. Cleaner. A long black government SUV waited by the curb, tinted windows gleaming under the morning sun. I took a slow breath and adjusted the cuffs of my jacket. Mark followed close behind. "You handled that exactly how they trained you," he said. "Could have gone another way if you hadn't kept your cool." I nodded once. "That's why they sent me." From my coat pocket, I retrieved a small encrypted phone. A single text had come through during the hearing. Just one word: proceed. I understood the meaning immediately. This trial wasn't just about clearing my name. It was a stress test. A calculated exposure. Someone high up needed confirmation that our systems, our courts, our officers, were still capable of being held accountable when a mirror was placed in front of them. I looked back at the courthouse doors one last time. Somewhere inside, Officers Hill and Brenner were now being interviewed by federal observers. Their badges would likely be suspended. Their names would land in reports they never imagined being part of. That wasn't vengeance. It was accountability. As I climbed into the SUV, the driver nodded without a word and pulled away from the curb. The courthouse shrank in the rearview mirror, but I wasn't done. There were more courthouses. More officers. More assumptions that needed shattering. And I'd be ready, with calm hands, sealed files, and credentials no one would see coming. 3 weeks later, I sat across from a panel in a secure conference room in D.C., wood-paneled walls, mirrored glass, and no nameplates. The man in the center wore a navy suit, no tie, his silver hair clipped short. Deputy Director Langley. He slid a manila folder across the table toward me. Your operation was effective, he said, tapping the folder. The judge issued 2 formal referrals. Internal Affairs has opened a full investigation into Hill and Brenner. 2 other officers who laughed during the intake were quietly transferred. I didn't say anything. I just watched him. Langley leaned forward, lacing his fingers. But more importantly, we learned what we needed. Local precincts in 3 neighboring counties are failing background cross-checks. They detained a federal agent with credentials in their system, and never ran the ID. That was the point, I said. Expose the breakdown before someone else gets buried by it. Langley nodded. You did. And it didn't go unnoticed. He gestured to the side. A younger man entered the room, dropped a sealed black folder in front of me, and left without a word. This one's bigger, Langley said. You won't be walking into a courtroom this time. You'll be stepping into a department, undercover. Full access. Full clearance. We want to see how deep this problem really goes. I didn't flinch. When do I start? Langley smiled slightly. You already have. As I opened the folder and scanned the contents, names, precinct codes, internal memos, I felt the weight of what was next. But I also felt something else. The calm. The silence I carried into that first courtroom was still with me. Only now, it wasn't defense. It was strategy. For days later, I walked through the glass double doors of the Southgate Police Department under a new name, new assignment, and a fabricated resume thick with just enough truth to pass any sniff test. Detective Marcus Reed. New badge. New ID. Same mission. The department was mid-sized, bustling with the usual energy of a city force, but underneath the surface, I could already feel the undercurrent. The kind of easy arrogance that comes from knowing oversight was weak and no one was really watching. Until now. Captain Royce, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, greeted me with a handshake that was firm but distracted. We're stretched thin, Reed. You'll be covering 2 beats and riding backup until we figure out who we trust on the inside. I nodded. Understood. What I didn't tell him was that I already had a list, 9 names long, of officers tied to suspicious booking patterns, body cam gaps, and report inconsistencies. 3 of them worked this very floor. As I was being shown to my desk, I passed Officer Hill's photo on the department's shared incident board. A red notice had been tacked beside it, on leave, pending investigation. He had no idea I was already here, watching the ripple effects of his mistake unfold from the inside. That was the power of staying calm. They never see you coming. My desk sat near the rear of the precinct bullpen, half hidden behind a column, perfect for observation. I kept my posture loose, my expressions neutral, just another new guy trying to stay out of the way. But every moment was calculated. The first week, I watched everything. 2 officers, Taggart and Mills, routinely bypassed arrest logs for minor detainments. They claimed verbal warnings, but never filed a report. 1 woman, a schoolteacher pulled over for a busted tail light, left the station in tears. No citation. No paperwork. Just a 2-hour delay and silence. I logged everything. Hidden beneath my locker's false bottom was a secure device that transmitted encrypted notes directly to the Bureau's Internal Investigations Unit. Every skipped entry, every suspicious off-record remark, every joke that wasn't funny, it all got logged. Then came my first test. Dispatch flagged a 10-94, suspicious individual loitering behind the courthouse, possible vagrant. I was sent with Officer Kelso, a cocky patrolman with mirrored sunglasses and a smirk that never faded. As we rolled up, I saw an older man leaning against the wall, reading a paperback. No threat. No weapon. No urgency. Kelso flipped on the lights anyway. Let's make it clear he's not welcome, he muttered. I stepped out calmly, keeping my tone even. Sir, you doing all right today? The man nodded. Just waiting on my niece. Her arraignment's at 10. Kelso moved in, hand resting on his holster like it was routine. This is federal property. You got ID? I stepped in before things escalated. Negative, I said firmly. Confirmed he's not violating any code. He's cleared to remain. Kelso turned toward me, clearly annoyed. What, you a lawyer now? I stared him down, calmly, quietly. No. I just follow the law. The tension held for a second too long. Then Kelso scoffed and walked back to the car. But I knew he'd just put me on his radar. Which meant I was getting close. 2 days later, I found a sticky note tucked inside my locker. No name. No handwriting to match. It read, "Watch your tone, new guy. This ain't DC." I crumpled it and slid it into my pocket. I didn't need to ask who left it, Kelso, or one of his buddies. Their clique ran this precinct like a private club, where silence was loyalty and accountability was betrayal. But I'd seen enough already. At lunch, I took a quiet walk to the roof. Pulled out my encrypted transmitter and tapped in the weekly code. Agent compromised. The screen pulsed. Then, maintain cover. Operation Green. That meant they knew I'd been marked, but they weren't pulling me yet. Back in the precinct, things shifted. Kelso and his crew stopped joking around me. Conversations ended when I entered a room. Officer Mills bumped my shoulder hard in the hallway and muttered, "Rookie," like it was a slur. I logged it all. But something darker was coming. That night, as I was reviewing bodycam footage from a recent downtown arrest, I found a file mislabeled in the system. I played it, and froze. The footage showed Officer Taggart and another cop I hadn't met, off-duty, out of uniform, forcing a young man into the back of an unmarked vehicle. No reading of rights. No backup call. No timestamp. And then the video cut out. I stared at the black screen. My pulse stayed even, but my jaw clenched. This wasn't just misconduct. This was abduction. And now I knew the rot ran deeper than anyone at the bureau thought. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I backed up the corrupted footage, embedded it with digital markers, and sent it up the secure line. 37 minutes later, I received a reply I'd never seen before. Authorization Delta 3. Initiate extraction protocol. Go. It was time. The next morning, I walked into the precinct like it was any other day. Coffee in hand. Calm as ever. But beneath my jacket, my real badge was clipped to my belt. Fully exposed. For once. I headed straight for Captain Royce's office and closed the door behind me. He looked up, confused. Reed? Something wrong? I placed the flash drive on his desk. You've got officers involved in unlawful detainments, falsified reports, and now an off-the-record abduction caught on camera. The Bureau's known for 2 weeks. Internal Affairs is en route with federal agents. They'll be here in 14 minutes. Royce's face went pale. Excuse me. I opened my jacket. He saw the badge. Special Agent Derek Langston. FBI. For a long second, he didn't move. Then he exhaled, like a man who knew the truth had just caught up to him. I walked out of the office. Down the corridor, Kelso was leaning against a file cabinet, smirking at someone's story. I stopped in front of him. His smirk faded the moment he saw the badge. You're under federal investigation, I said plainly. Hands where I can see them. He didn't move. Then, the front doors of the precinct burst open. 4 bureau agents in suits and vests swept in, weapons holstered but visible, IDs already raised. Kelso backed into the wall, stunned. Officers scattered. Papers dropped. Attention cracked like thunder through the bullpen. By noon, 5 officers were in federal custody. By sunset, the Southgate PD had a federal audit order and a new acting chief. And by midnight, I was already on the road to the next assignment, no fanfare, no press release. Just one more precinct that would never laugh off protocol again. This wasn't revenge. It was reform. One department at a time.